Hello and welcome to Never on the Back Foot. In today's weekly live show, we will discuss the just concluded Women's Premier League 2024 auctions of yesterday. Joining us for this discussion is Risha, our in-house guest and Pakka RCB fan, who also watched the auctions live from the RCB bar and cafe yesterday. So watch out for his insights. Now, the 2024 Women's Premier League auctions concluded in Mumbai yesterday, where we saw 30 players get signed. We had 21 Indian players and 9 overseas players, and 165 players had registered for the auction. So it was quite heavy duty. And we will try to concise all our insights, thoughts, analysis for you viewers as well. So feel free to share your thoughts and suggestions, insights, anything in the live chat, and we will certainly address it. So without further ado, let's get started with our discussion. So, Rishabh, to just kickstart our discussion, how would you rate that auctions, right? We saw so much of action, all the teams packed. You could see the table with, so many important members of the management, the selection committee, and everyone. So, how would you look at it?
I think it was a pretty tight auction, if you ask me. Tight in the sense that all a lot of teams had their core players already retained, so it wasn't like a mega auction that they have to build from scratch. It was more where they were looking to fill in the gaps, those one or two gaps that they would think that they have to balance out the team more, or to get backup players and basically strengthen the team more. Because if you look at the buys, it was like pretty evident that the teams knew whom they wanted, and it was pretty much a targeted auction. That's why a lot of surprises as well, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I felt it was more that kind of an auction where they were looking to fill in those gaps and just get backups and strengthen, rather than looking to build from scratch, because most of the work was already done because players were retained. So in that sense, it wasn't as intense an auction as we would normally see. But yes, a lot of interesting buys as well. So that was good to see, especially our Indian players. That was very heartwarming to see.
Certainly. And to give a little context to our viewers as well, now in the first season of the Women's Premier League, in the auctions, the teams entered with like 12 crores, and the remaining purse amount was used for this mini auction. So that's why we didn't see any massive buys. I mean, we did see one, but we still saw players getting snapped up. And talking about heartening purchases as well, now we saw how Kashvi Gautam, right? She scripted history, becoming the most expensive uncapped player, getting a sum of 2 crores, and getting picked by a team like Gujarat Giants certainly will do her a world of good. So did you see that coming, and how would you assess her career graph?
In all honesty, I did not see that coming, because 2 crores is a huge bid. But now, if you look back in hindsight, I feel she rightly deserves it, because if you look at Kashvi Gautam, for people who do not know about her, in 2020 in the domestic under 19 one day championship, she picked 10 plus wickets, and she picked a hat trick as well. And in the women's T20 trophy right now recently, she picked up 12 wickets with an economy of just 4.14. So that is like, those are really impressive figures. And especially for a team like Gujarat, where they let go a lot of their players, they released like 11 players before the auction. So they were certainly looking for some stability, and it was very evident that they wanted to go all out. And I think she deserves getting the amount she did as well, looking at her domestic career, her graph, and how she's risen up the ranks. So now that I look back, it's not surprising that she went for that much money, and she is one of those heartwarming Indian buys that I was talking to you about.
Definitely. And this young girl coming from Chandigarh with big dreams and making it so big at the Women's Premier League auctions is a story for all of us, right? And now, even looking at other purchases, who was your favorite buy from the auction?
So there's one more player along the lines of Kashvi Gautam as well. That's Vrinda Dinesh, who was a favorite buy for me. She's a Karnataka girl as well, and a lot of questions around her getting 1.3 crores, but she's really deserving, and she became the first uncapped player to get sold for over 1 crore, until of course Kashvi went for 2. So if you look at Brinda Dinesh, she's been really consistent in Karnataka circuit over a long period of time. You take the women's senior one day trophy, the senior women's T20 trophy. or the Women's Challenger Trophy. She's won all of it. She's a winner of all of them. And in the recent Women's Senior One Day Trophy, she scored like 477 runs in just 11 innings. So that, shows her skills as a batter and how consistent she's been. So she again was one of the most favorite buys for me. If I look at it from my favorite team, RCB's perspective, I would have told I would have told Georgia Wareham was one of my favorite buys. But looking overall, I think Vrinda Dinesh buy was something that was really exciting, and she deserved to get what she gets. And this is the right platform for these kind of young talent, Vrinda Dinesh, Kashvi Gautam, and a lot of other young talented girls coming up, because these kind of platforms, apart from the domestic cricket that is happening where they can rub shoulders with some of the best across the world, is actually really important for the upliftment of Indian women's cricket as well. So yeah, this was one of my most favorite buys.
I think I'll agree with you on that one. And the inside RCB fan in me was also like, I wished RCB could have, procured her services.
Exactly.
But, it's still nice to see how, Brinda Dinesh is still picked up by UP Warriors, right? Now, again, although we saw a lot of interesting purchases, the auction dynamics is something that a lot of us fans should still, wrap our heads around, because you have the likes of Chamari Atapattu and Deandra Doughton, Devika Vaidya, you had Uma Chetri, and a lot of these players going unsold, right? So, were you disappointed, and any factors you would attribute this to?
I think Chamari Atapattu going unsold was definitely a surprise and a shocker for a lot of us, because recent WBBL she scored 500 plus runs, picked up a few wickets as well, and she was the player of the tournament. I mean, I don't know what more does she really need to do for herself to get a bidder, not even at base price. That was really, really shocking and disappointing, because as a player, when you have come off such a fine tournament, and WBBL is again one of the most premier women's franchise tournaments. It's not a small league at all by any means. So if you're like performing the best over there, coming to WPL and you're not getting picked up, then that question, you might start questioning yourself that what more could I have done, or what is less in me, and that shouldn't happen to any player. And it's not like Chamari Atapattu is a new player. She's been around for years. She's captain Sri Lanka as well. She brings that experience also. So, I mean, she doesn't have to talk for herself to get picked up. So, I'm really surprised, and it wasn't even the auction dynamics factor. If we speak that some players come up late and money is already spent, she came in at a decent time as well, where teams could have bid. If Annabelle Sutherland could go for a lot of money, and likes of Kashvi Gautam can go for a lot of money, then Chamari Attapattu is really surprising. Coming to Deandra Dottin, yes, again she is one of those fearless openers, like a lot of West Indies cricketers are. They play that fearless brand of cricket. But I think recent form would be one factor why Deandra Dottin really went unsold, despite being a renowned name in the women's cricket circuit. But Chamari Attapattu, for me and for a lot of us, I think is a real shocker, and I cannot wrap my head around why she did not get a bidder. I don't feel there is any explanation as to why she did not get picked.
I mean, all around social media, we could see this discourse of how, most of the teams had their batting, stocked up with so many options. So the inclusion of Chamari Atapattu right at the top of the order would not augur well for a lot of teams. So perhaps that could be the reason. And even Deandra Doughton, with how things unfolded last time with Gujarat Giants, that whole medical report and the
Yeah,
scandal that
I think that
happened,
could have been a factor.
yeah, definitely. And even looking at other names, right? You have the likes of Kim Garth, then Nicola Hancock not getting picked. So, again, were you surprised? And are there any other names that's coming right at the top of your head who you were shocked that they weren't picked up by any team?
Actually, quite a few names. You mentioned Kim Garth. She was one name that was really doing the rounds, because she's performed well in the WBBL as well. So surprising that she didn't get picked. Again, the likes of Amy Jones, Tammy Beaumont, all of these guys. But then, like you told, I think the batting side of things is pretty sorted for a lot of teams. And like I told you at the beginning as well, this was that kind of an auction where they were just looking to fill in the gaps more than looking to get in players. So that could have been a factor. Deandra Doughton, as you mentioned, Amanda Jade Wellington, Alana King as well, and Tara Norris as well. These are really few names that I felt shocked that even if they aren't fitting in your 11, maybe to have them on the bench wouldn't be a bad choice if you could get them at their base price. Because in this kind of a tournament, you never know when someone gets injured or someone's not able to perform. You might want to replace. So I feel they could have got picked, but yeah, these could be the factors that pretty much the teams were already sorted and they had their most of their bases and their core retained. So probably that could have led to these guys not getting picked.
Agreed. And does this also somewhere ask you the question that, had there been more teams in the Women's Premier League, say even 6 teams or 8 teams, we would have seen a lot more players actually get picked? Because now, when you look at the whole fact of Associate Nation players, at least last season we had Tara Norris, but this time around, we don't see names like that getting picked by teams. So, do you see, the inclusion of more teams actually doing a world of good to these players as well as to the popularizing of the league?
Definitely, I think that representation is one thing that is very important to globally uplift women's cricket and to benefit these players as well. Because a lot of these players that I mentioned, Amy Jones, Deandra Dottin, Alana King, all of these guys are proven performers, and them not getting picked is a bit of a surprise. They've been consistently performing for their national teams and across the different leagues that they play as well. So, if you could probably have a team or two more, then a lot of these players would definitely find a team. And yeah, that representation is something that is very important, and I think BCCI in the future has to look at getting in a few more teams once they can sort it out. And I don't think there's any there's no less amount of people who can sponsor these teams. If that is the reason that don't have enough sponsors to bring in more teams, I do not think that can be an excuse, really, in a country like India, especially. So yeah, I think we need to have a few more teams to also increase the competition and to give these players more platform. Not just these foreign players, but the more the teams, the more Indian players coming in as well. The more them getting platform and them getting that experience to rub shoulders with these international stars and with some of the best cricketing minds to play under that pressure in that kind of situations is only going to help them gain more experience, and eventually it's going to be better for Indian women's cricket and women's cricket globally.
Agreed, because we have seen how the WPL has certainly transformed the Australian cricketing ecosystem. Just look at the auctions, the team list yesterday. You'd see so many Aussies already picked in each of these
Definitely.
teams. So many
Yeah.
Aussies who didn't get picked, and the list is just endless, right? With how many superstars the Australian team has actually produced. So yeah, I think bringing in more teams and that exposure factor is something that the BCCI will certainly have to consider even in the long run. So now let's take our conversation and look team wise, right? We have 5 teams with such an exciting crop of players. So let's first start off with Delhi, right? So now Delhi, of course, seemed like your more settled unit. They had retained a great chunk of their core. I mean, you had Alice Capsey, then Laura Harris, you had Meg Lanning. These were the 3 overseas players retained, and you had a good Indian crop of players. Now, when you look at the new buys as well on the screen, you have Annabelle Sutherland, Aparna Mondal, and Ashwini Kumar, right? So, Rishabh, how would you rate these purchases? I mean, Annabelle Sutherland obviously comes in with that experience of having played in the WPBL. She had a very good season this time around. She captained also a couple of games. Then you have Aparna Mondal, who specifically, Saurav Ganguly is happy at her acquisition. And Ashwini Kumar is again another player who comes in with so much experience. Having played in the domestic circuit, has been amongst the runs as well. So, how would you assess these purchases?
I think Delhi and Mumbai were one of those teams who did not have a lot to do at the auction, honestly, yesterday, because a large chunk of their core was retained. Annabelle Sutherland was a really interesting buy because you saw Delhi and Mumbai going all out for her, and if Mumbai had more in their purse, I think they would have still gone beyond that 2 crore mark, you know. And Annabelle Sutherland, like you told, she's performed really well in the WBBL, brings in that variety that I think Delhi Capitals do need. They have a good set of foreign players: Alice Capsey, Jess Jonathan, Marizen Cap, and if you look at the Delhi's team with the likes of Poonam Radha Yadav, Shafali Verma, Shikha Pandey, they have a good Indian core, Sneha Diti as well, Tanya Bhatia. These are all like renowned names in Indian women's cricket. So along with them, the likes of Aparna Mondal and Ashwani Kumari, who might not be a lot heard about otherwise coming in, actually will benefit them playing around all of these guys who are a part of the Indian women's team. So I think it is a good opportunity that the Delhi Capitals have given to them. It will be interesting to see how they fit in because they already have a good core of Indian players there in their 11. So that I'm not quite sure if they would get consistent chances in the 11 really, but still having them there is not just beneficial for the team but for them personally as well. And Annabelle Sutherland, I think, really gives a boost to them because they already have a good set of foreign players, but it just strengthens their team a lot more. They performed well last season as well, and they could just go a step ahead.
Certainly, and looking at Delhi Capitals, the likes of Alice Capsey, Jess Jonathan, Laura Harris, and Marizanne Kapp. Now, even with Annabelle Sutherland, I think they'll be able to, mix and match their foreign recruits through the season as well, right? I mean, initially they might want to probably start off with, of course, Meg Lanning, Marizanne Kapp, and Jess Jonathan. Perhaps Annabelle Sutherland can be that fourth option, right?
Yeah, Annabelle Sutherland is that one player who can straight away walk into any team's playing 11 without a doubt. She comes in with good WBBL form, recent form as well. So there's no doubt that she could certainly be a starter. And they went all out for her in the auction as well. That was one really intense bid that went on for her. So I definitely see her starting in the 11 for Delhi.
Certainly. And let's now, take our attention to Gujarat Giants, right? Now, this was a team that made wholesale, releases ahead of the auctions and often, called as the Railways team because they had so many Railways players in that first season. You had Mithali Raj, you had Nushan Al Khadir at that, management level as well, picking these players. But now when you look at the new buys as well, Phoebe Litchfield, right? What a purchase for 1 crore, your first name in the auction, and bang on all the teams,
Big
just going
purchase.
for her. Yeah, and even the likes of Meghna Singh, you have Trisha Pujita, Kashvi Gautam, as we've spoken about, you have Priya Mishra, Lauren Chiatel, then you have Catherine Bryce, Manat Kashyap, Veda Krishnamurti, a name we were discussing off record, and even Taranum Pathan, right? So this certainly seems like a very good set of purchases that really add value to the setup because Gujarat had a very forgettable last season and they would want to, they would look to undo all that damage. So again, how would you look at these purchases and smart buys, you reckon?
One of the most busiest teams I'd say at the auction because they released a lot of players. Looks like they were looking to rebuild a bit, but if you look at their retentions, Ashley Gardner, Beth Mooney, Harlin Dior, Laura Woolward, they still had Sneharana, they still had a decent set of players who were retained, and I think they were looking to build their team around this set of players. Phoebe Litchfield and Lauren Chattel, two really, really good buys because, again, recent WBBL form, both of them were topping the charts this BBL and Australian players, again, uh, what do I tell? I mean, a lot of them have been performing so well in the WBBL and even at the international side. I mean, there's a reason why they are the most successful team, even in the women's game as well. So if you look at the buys, and I think again to have the likes of Kashvi Gautam, that's again another really good buy because if you look at their Indian players, apart from the likes of Harleen Deol and Sneerana, they did not seem to have that much of strength in their Indian core. And the key to winning these kind of tournaments is having a good local, core of players. So I think they've looked to do that as well. Trisha Pujita, Meghna Singh, again, a good option that they've got in Kashvi Gautam, Priya Mishra, Manat Kashyap. Veda Krishnamurti is again one of a surprise and interesting buy for me. Now, many people would say that she's been off the radar. She hasn't had significant performances. She's been out of the Indian team for a very long time as well now. But if you look at their team, She is someone who can give them that stability in the middle order. They have the big hitters that they need, but someone who can carry the innings, who brings in that experience, and who can also take the innings. These players can play around her, who can hold up one hand. So I think that's why Veda Krishnamurthy can prove to be a really, really good buy for them in terms of the experience and the stability she brings to that batting order. So I was impressed with that buy. I was hoping that RCB would go for her because they also have that middle order issues with the top batting really being heavy. So surprising buy for a lot of people. But I feel Veda Krishnamurthy, for me in particular, is one very smart buy by the Gujarat Giants, looking at the dynamics of their team.
Agreed. And another name, that really was quite interesting and a smart purchase by Gujarat Giants has to be Catherine Bryce, right? Now, she is an associate nation player who hails from Scotland. So now Gujarat Giants, they can actually play four overseas players and have that one extra
Extra
associate
option.
nations player as well. So do you think that was actually a smart purchase in case, one of their Indian players is having an off day, an off season or a couple of matches, she can probably slot herself in?
She can definitely sort herself in. She's proven her case, and it's definitely good when you can give your captain and your management that luxury to play around with players in case you want to rotate based on the conditions or you want to experiment, or some player like you mentioned isn't doing well. So it's always good to have that option, and a name who has done herself good. She's done enough justice for herself to be picked, I think. So it's definitely again a good buy and a smart buy, and I hope she gets, if not the entire tournament, at least a reasonable amount of chances to showcase her skills for the Giants. She can prove to be a very crucial factor for them, like you mentioned.
Exactly, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing what kind of a team composition that Gujarat Giants come up with. And yeah, on that note, let's move on to our next team, that is Mumbai Indians. Right now, again, this is another team who had a very breezy auctions. Right, I mean, just look at their acquisitions in the form of Shabnam Ismail. You have Amandeep Kaur, S. Sajna, Fatima Jafar, and Kirtana Balakrishnan. When you read the stories, right, of these players, it's very heartening, right? Now, when you look at the likes of Keetana Balakrishnan, the kind of struggle she has undergone, en route her journey. She's a, cricketer who is from Tamil Nadu, and her journey has been nothing short of inspiring. And you have Fatima Jafar, S. Sajna. These were picks that Mumbai Indians, just raised the paddle and they knew that these were the players they wanted. And we know how Mumbai has this knack of getting players, unearthing these gems who just end up just changing so much about the game. So how would you look at Mumbai's purchases and their whole mindset at the auction?
Again, Mumbai was one team that did not have to do a lot at the auction, because if you look at their core retentions, Amelia Kerr, Claude Ryan, Harmanpreet, Haley Matthews, Isabel Wong, Nat Siver, Pooja Vasrakar, they have everything. They have all those names. And I think Shabnim Ismail coming in only adds to their strength. If you look at their pace bowling attack with Isi Wong, Pooja Vasrakar, Natalie Siver, and now Shabnim Ismail coming into that attack as well, that is an attack that is to be feared. That is really a pace attack that is to be feared, with all the experience that Shabnim Ismail brings in. Now that she's not playing international cricket as well, she can put her complete focus here. It only strengthens an already strengthened side, so it makes them a more fearsome side. And like you mentioned about Sajana, Fatima Jafar, Kirtana Balakrishnan, and how Mumbai Indians unearthed these talents, how they got in Saika Ishat last season, and we saw her performance. She was one of the standout performers throughout the season, so consistent. So if some of these players can get that platform and once again, deliver how she did, make their name, again comes down to that story that it's going to benefit Indian women's cricket. And just look at the names in that Mumbai's lineup already. And if you look at their staff as well, Charlotte Edwards was there at the auction yesterday, one of the biggest names in women's cricket. She comes right after Mithali Raj. If you look at the one-day records in women's cricket, so having that kind of a person and all these kind of players in the side, Haley Matthews, Amelia Kerr, these are all big names. So rubbing, just even getting to share the dressing room, excuse me, with these kind of players can do a wonder of good. And if at all they do get to play a few games, who knows, we can have another Saika Aisha coming out from Mumbai Indians this season as well. So really, really good buys. They did not, more or less, their 11 is really sorted. So it's like, I'm not sure again if these players would get a chance, but they have that option to really experiment and rotate and see how the combination comes up. And again, if these guys can be given a few chances, which I do feel Mumbai Indians, with Harmanpreet Kaur being there, who is captaining the T20 side as well, so definitely she would want to look at these names, keeping Indian cricket in mind as well. So that could be a factor where these guys can really make a case for themselves going ahead.
Agreed, and very valid points. But looking at the acquisition of Shabnim as well, right? Now, I think Mumbai's pace attack seemed like very sorted compared to other teams. So I thought the bidding for Shabnim as well was going to be quite intense, and it did live up to that expectation. But Mumbai eventually ended up getting her services. So now, when you look at Mumbai Indians, right, you have the likes of Amelia Kerr, you have Chloe Tryon, you have Haley Matthews, you have Issy Wong, Nat Siver, right? You already have these overseas players. Now, with the acquisition of Shabnim as well, how do you see her fit in the scheme of things? Because from the looks of it, I think Amelia Kerr, Haley Matthews, Nat Siver make it into that playing 11. There's no questions about that. So,
Definitely.
between like Issy Wong and Shabnim Ismail, who do you think will get the go ahead? Because Issy Wong is right now playing in India, as a part of the England versus India series that's happening. And Shabnim Ismail is, well, your veteran, iconic pace bowler, right? So, do you think it's actually going to be problems of abundance and selection for Mumbai somewhere?
Might be a problem of plenty, but then that's a good problem to have when you have these kind of players in your side, because I think out of Issy Wong and Shabnim Ismail, the conditions will play a big factor as to who makes it to that 11. Because Issy Wong, she gets the ball to move, she has good pace, good bounce, she has a good rhythmic action as well, and she's currently playing in India. But on the other hand, if you look at Shabnim Ismail, again one of those bowlers who can get the ball to move both ways. And up front at the top with that new ball, she's been really lethal throughout her career, because so she can bring in that experience with the new ball for you. And I'd say why Shabnim Ismail is a really good buy, even though it might feel like Mumbai Indians might not have needed her. Even if she doesn't end up playing a lot of games, having her there she can also play the role of a mentor, with the likes of Issy Wong, Pooja Varsakar, Nat Siver being there. To have someone like her in the side, even if she doesn't play a lot of games, she can play that mentor's role really well. And it gives you that option to rotate between her, between Nat Siver also, for that matter, if you want to go in with like two or three fast bowlers, where the wicket is giving, usually Mumbai's wickets give you good bounce as well, and there is assistance for fast bowlers, especially in those first 6 overs. If you look at the traditional Mumbai wickets, so I think having Shabnim Ismail there is a really good option. With the impact player rule, she can come bowler 4 overs and go out as well. So that is something that Mumbai can work out and can use effectively to their combination.
Agreed. I think all of these factors would have played in, to include a player of her nature, because I think other teams needed her more. But
They were
with
very
now,
Mumbai were really sorted, and the reason they had just like 2.5, 2.3 some crores left,
hmm.
and they went all out for Shabnim Ismail. So it shows you the planning. They knew who they wanted. They got her in. They went all out just for that one player, and it shows how well job they've done with their retentions, that they didn't have to do a lot. And even despite that, they got such a big name to their side. Again, I think a lot more teams, like you told, would have wanted her more than Mumbai actually need her. But yeah, shows that it was a very strategic and well planned buy, I think.
Certainly, and even the other purchases, as we have discussed, will definitely work well for Mumbai Indians, or they know how to get these
They know
players
how
to
to get
play
the
well.
best out of their players.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and now let's move on to another team that's very close to our hearts. That has often managed to break us while also give us moments of happiness. That's RCB, right? Now, RCB again had a very interesting auction. We see mixed reactions everywhere, but I'd say we've made some really interesting purchases. Like you have Georgia Warren, you have Kate Cross, Ekta Bisht, Shubha Satish, S. Meghna, then you have Simran Bahadur and Sophie Molyneux, right, to make up RCB's new core. So I'll first ask you, what are your thoughts on these purchases, and do you see them fit well into the RCB scheme of things?
Definitely, I think Georgia Wareham at 40 lakhs was a really steal buy. Looking at her recent WPL season, she scored at a strike rate of over 150. So she's someone who can give you that power hitting that you need. If you see, we already have the likes of Elise Perry and Heather Knight over there, along with Sophie Devine as well. So it adds to that power hitting when your batting is concerned, lower down the order, because these are all guys who play at the top. And down the order, we were lacking that power hitting. If you look at RCB last season, and she brings in that variety with her bowling as well. Uh, because again, spin is something we were clearly lacking last season. And talking of that, I think Ekta Bisht was an unexpected buy from a fan's perspective, but a brilliant buy if you logically look at it. Because first of all, a left arm spinner, sorry, who brings in that variety and the experience that she brings in is really really key. Ekta Bisht along with Georgia Veram there, and um, you know. Shriyanka Patil already being there gives the strength to that spin attack, which looked a little lackluster last season. And again, Kate Cross, I think, is another really valuable buy. Looking at the experience she has of playing in Indian conditions, and she fits in really well with the likes of Elise Perry, Heather Knight, and Sophie Devine in that all-round options that we have. So it gives that option to rotate with Heather Knight and Elise Perry, because Kate Cross can decently bat as well. It's not like she can't. So again, it gives you that option to rotate really well. And then if you also look at Sabinini Meghna, again, I don't see her directly starting into the 11, but somewhere if you need that stability in the batting order going around in the tournament, I think she is someone who fits in nicely in the middle, who can give you that stability. Simran Dil Bahadur as well, really one of those young pacers who really grabs attention. God forbid if Renuka Singh doesn't perform well, you have your backup there. Simran Bahadur swings the ball well, so she fits in as that option. I think they've done a good job to cover the bases. Sophie Molino as well, another really decent buy who can be a good backup to your foreign options. So all in all, I think the bowling side of things was something where they were lacking, with big names being there in the batting already. And I think RCB have done a decent job to fill in those gaps with their bowling and have enough options to rotate around throughout the season.
Certainly, and looking at RCB again, you have so many talking points now. Already, RCB has Elise Perry, you have Heather Knight, you have Sophie Devine, right? So for the this overseas fourth option, who do you think would fit in? I believe Georgia Warren could factor in, because she brings in that value to the team. You also have Kate Cross, with her all round abilities. Sophie Molyneux also presents herself as that perfect option. So again, what are your thoughts on who could be this fourth option that RCB would want to experiment with, or would they just read into the conditions more and accordingly choose?
I think Elise Perry, Heather Knight, and Sophie Devine are your three starters for sure. Now, with Warham, Kate Cross, and Sophie Molino being there, like you mentioned, based on the conditions, it gives you that flexibility to play in. If you want to go for that extra pace, you can have Kate Cross. If you want to go with the spin option, you can have Georgia Wareham and Sophie Molino there. And all of these guys also bat reasonably well. Georgia Wareham is a more well-established all-rounder, but the other two guys also provide you that depth in the batting as well that you require. Sophie Molino as well. So it brings that good balance really to the side if you want to play that extra spinning option or that extra pace option, but then you're not compromising on your batting, because they can give you decent batting down that order as well. So it's really good options to have based on the conditions that they can play. And I also see Ekta Bisht certainly starting in the 11 with her left arm spin. can bring in a lot of variety, and the experience that she has, is really really something that RCB could make effective use of. I really hope to see her starting in the 11.
Definitely, and it's very heartening to see that RCB has this squad in place, and you have so many backup options as well to your frontline playing 11. So hopefully, it's again not a good team on paper that could not deliver on the field type of situation like last time. And fingers crossed for a great season. Now, let's take our attention to the last and final team under focus. That's UP Warriors, right? Now, again with the UP Warriors, we see the new buys in the form of Danny White, which came as a surprise to so many people because hey, she's been out of form for some time. We see that inconsistency creep in sometimes. Yet she was picked. Vrinda Dinesh, who we have of course spoken about. Then you have Saima Thakur, you have Poonam Khemnar, who was released by RCB, and
RCB,
you
yes.
have Gohar Sultana, right? So again, how would you look at these purchases and good day at the auction for UP Warriors?
Yeah, again, I think UP did not have a lot to do, because if you look at their side, already seems well settled with, Alisa Healy, Deepthi Sharma, Grace Harris, Lauren Bell, Rajeshwari Gaikwad, Sophie Eccleston, Shweta Sherawat, all of these names, Talia McGrath as well, a big name there. So they have their core more or less retained already. Danny Wyatt, I think, comes in as a really good, option for them, and she could probably start in the 11 as well, because she's someone who brings that flexibility. She can open the batting, she can play for you in the middle order as well, and she has that ability to pick up pace in the innings. She can provide you with those with that quick scoring ability. Vrinda Dinesh, we've already spoken about. I'm definitely sure she's going to start in the 11. She brings that stability in their batting that they really need, that batting powerhouse. Poonam Khemnar, again, I'm a little interesting buy, and I'm happy that she did get a buy released by RCB last season. Didn't perform that well, but I certainly feel she has that potential, and she can also do wonders for UP with the likes of Deepthi Sharma, Rajeshwari Gaikwad being there. I think she is someone who can also add to their combination, and they can work it out well with the options.
Yeah, that's true. And looking at their foreign players in the team, you have Alisa Healy, skipper. You have Grace Harris, Lauren Bell, Talia Megra, and Sophie Eccleston. And now with the acquisition of Danny Wyatt as well, who do you think would be like the four overseas slots that's definitely going to make it? I mean, Alisa Healy. I think Alisa Healy, Sophie
And
Eccleston, and Talia Megra certainly make it in. But
yeah,
again, do you think it's going to be a problem with the fourth slot?
three of them definitely start, and it's going to be an option between Grace Harris, Lauren Bell, and Danny Wyatt. Again, goes on the conditions, because if they feel it's a good batting wicket, I probably see Danny Wyatt making that fourth option if it's a good batting wicket, because she can provide you with those impactful runs. She has the ability to score quick runs, although she's not being in form of late, like you mentioned, but she comes in with her experience and she has her reputation. So she and the fact that she went unsold last season, she has a point to prove. I'm sure she'll have a statement to make. That hunger would be there, because Danny White is one of those, if not the biggest, among the big names in international women's cricket. So I'm sure having that kind of a player who has a point to prove can only benefit the team more. Again, because Mumbai also produces good batting tracks, a lot of the wickets there. So keeping that in mind, I think Danny White is a really good option to have, and I can see her starting over Lauren Bell, for example, in that 11.
Definitely. And, UP Warriors again seems like a very strong paper on team. No, strong team on paper. And even when you see their last season, right, they ended up third on the table. They lost in that knockout. So here's hoping,
Third
they
on the
can punch above their weight and make it to that finals as well. Now that we've reviewed all of these, five teams, who is, really seeming strong for you, and any predictions you'd like to make ahead of the auctions as to who could possibly be in that finals and be the winner?
I think undoubtedly and undeniably, Mumbai Indians is one of the team that is looking really well balanced, and they've only added to their strength. For me, Gujarat Giants is also one team that is, looking dangerous. The kind of players they have, if they can deliver, they are one team that looks really, very sorted on paper. Even Delhi Capitals, for that matter, because of the Indian core that I talked to you about, I think probably they have the strongest Indian core with all of these guys who are playing for the national team as well. And looking at this season's buy, I think RCB have also done a decent job, and they're definitely looking much better than they were last season. They've tried to tick in those boxes with their bowling options, with their all-round options, and looks good on paper, like you mentioned. And I definitely feel they should do a lot well than they did last season. But if you ask me, one team playing the final, I think Mumbai Indians is definitely that one team that I see playing in the final, and there's going to be a good competition with the likes of Gujarat, Delhi, and Bangalore around that. UP as well, but I still feel the UP Warriors could have done a slightly better job. It's really going to be interesting to see how their combination lines up. But I think it's going to be a good WPL because the teams have retained lot of their players. The cores are set, and the likes of Delhi and Mumbai in particular seem to have only added to their strength. So I think these two, really particularly these two, are going to be the teams to beat.
Definitely. I mean, bold predictions there. So let's see how that pans out. And we have an interesting comment coming in from Moinak, who says, I think there are no slots for openers. That's why, we didn't see Tamari Atapa to get picked. I believe this WPL is more of a BCCI propaganda than a revolution for the women's game. At least 6 games and home and away should have been mandatory. And actually, it also brings me to my question of, do you think that the WPL should actually experiment with different venues this time? But then I think the biggest challenge would be that of like travel and logistics as well. So, Rishabh, how do you look at this playing out and going ahead? Do you see like this home and away concept coming in?
I think the point of having an home and away concept is really, really important, because then that allows teams to, actually see where they stand rather than playing at just one venue, gives them more room for experimentation with the players as well when we are talking about these conditions and combinations. So when you're playing at different venues is when you really get tested as a team. Rather than you getting acclimatized to one venue, even though the pitches would be different that are used for each game, it's still the same venue you're playing at. And I really feel they should have experimented with two or at least three different venues. But I think Jai Shah's statement recently came out that this year's WPL, this 2024 WPL, is also going to be held in one state itself, one city itself. So, and most likely it's going to be Mumbai itself with the three grounds that they have. Uh, Travel and logistics is one reason that he did mention, but if you can make it happen for the men's, the IPL, then I don't see a reason why they can't make it happen with WPL as well. It's probably because they have a shorter window than the IPL. But then, if you increase the number of teams, the window will automatically get increased, and it gives you room to sort out your logistics and travel. I think that is definitely something, at least from the third season, that they should look at, because that makes the competition all the more interesting. Having teams playing at different venues, home and away, gives that home advantage to the teams as well. And I think then we'll see a lot more of these names getting bought at the auction, and more intense auctions than what we saw yesterday, with teams trying to work out those combinations based on different venues. I think this is something that they really need to experiment, and if they can make it happen with the IPL, I don't see over a period of time why they can't make it happen with the WPL as well.
Agreed. And here's hoping that we see the expansion of the league because if reports are to be believed, in 2025, 26, they're looking at expanding the league to more teams. So that's when you can actually have all these home and away games, more travel for the teams, exposure. I think the only way to grow the game is to, take it to cities besides, the normal playing ones as well. So fingers crossed for that. And yeah, as we reach the end of our discussion as well, Rishabh, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers? As always going to say listeners, force of habit with the audio podcast. But any final thoughts?
I think this season of the WPL is really going to be even more interesting than the last season. The last season was already a hit, but now with the looking at how the auctions have panned out, the teams are pretty much very sorted with who they wanted and how they wanted to go about their strategy at the auctions. It was very evident that the teams had planned out who they wanted and they went behind those specific players as well. So at least looking at the auctions that they had those specific strategies set in mind, and that's why we did not see a lot of surprising buys or a lot more of intense bids. I think the teams are confident in themselves, and that hopefully should lead us to see more intense competitions and a more intense WPL than last season, where we don't have one or two teams right at the top and those one or two teams just staying at the bottom throughout. I hope we have, that an extra added intensity that makes it good for the viewers as well. And the more the pressure that way in which these players play, particularly these lot of young and Indian players who've been picked, the more pressure they get exposed to that way, it will help them to gain more experience and shape themselves as future cricketers. So I feel that is one thing that I'm really looking forward to this season. And I also hope in upcoming seasons we have different venues coming up, because it makes it interesting for the viewers as well, because we don't have to travel to just one state or city to go watch the games then.
Agreed. And the last season of the Women's Premier League really set the bar. And now this time around, with better players and so much more to look forward to, it's just exciting times and can't wait, for our calendar to show February, March for that window of the Women's Premier League, right? So yeah, again, looking forward to that. And yeah, that pretty much does conclude our discussion. We have Debrub also saying great work and he's proud of
Thank
us. So
you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, it's comments like these that really keep us going. And on that note, I'd like to draw curtains on our discussion. Thank you so much, Rishabh, for joining Never in the Back Foot. I've stopped keeping account because
Thank you for
you know
always having me. It's become like a homecoming kind of thing. Doesn't feel like
yeah.
I'm on a show anymore. It's more like it's a conversation that we are having that's only recorded and put out. That's like the only difference.
Exactly. And, we have our viewers and listeners just peeking into this conversation. I mean, you always bring in so many insights and valuable, observations to each of our conversations. So thank you so much for that. And for all the viewers who stuck around, for this 47-minute long live, thank you so much for that and for
Thank you.
sharing your comments. We really hope you also had something to take away, and the Women's Premier League is something you are also looking forward to. And we will be doing a live show like this every now and then. So make sure you subscribe and follow Never in the Back on Instagram, X, and YouTube. So yeah, we also have an audio podcast on Spotify where Rishabh has come many times. Again, we're not keeping account. So yeah, do check that out as well. And until next time, bye listeners, bye viewers. Thank you so much.